Osiris, Horus, virgin born, December 25th,
No.
have 12 disciples,
No.
died on a cross,
No.
rose from the dead.
In many cases, all I can say is some of these is no evidence, period. Yeah, when we were talking about Mithra, I at least found something they could have drawn it from and misinterpreted. In the case of many of these guys, with the particular claims you talked about, I can't even find anything close. I mean, another fellow did the research on Osiris before I did, and on Horus. He could find maybe a group of 4 disciples for one of those guys. Okay, he couldn't find. Yeah, in the case of virgin born, well, Horus was definitely not virgin born. In fact, there's a scene in Egyptian mythology showing Osiris and Isis quite clearly having sexual intercourse, although at the time Osiris is dead. But nevertheless, it's clearly not virginity happening there.
So, but these claims, your book Shattering the Christ Myth, all your articles on Tecton Apologetics, where they can find you on the internet, you address every single one of these claims, yet they're thrown in a loaded sense. On the Zeitgeist movie, they're presented with music, and they're presented as a profound new insight that Christians won't tell you about, or they're ignorant of. This must just get you irritated.
It's hard to get me irritated about anything, really. It gets me laughing after a while.
So Mithra. Who else? Dionysus?
Yeah, let's talk about Dionysus. Actually, let's talk about what I've got right here. I brought one of their books. Okay, this book is titled The Jesus Mysteries, and it's by 2 gentlemen who advocate this thesis. Their names are Timothy Freke, F-R-E-K-E. I don't think that's intentional. And Peter Gandy. Okay, and these fellows are not historians. They're not trained as historians. They don't even have doctorate. I think they have one of them has a master's degree. That's as far as they go. And they've offered up a lot of material. Dionysus is one of their focuses. And you see this picture I have on the front of the book. Now, you look at that, and what does that look like to you?
It looks like someone hanging on a cross.
Looks like someone hanging on a cross, right? Now, you will see this picture all over the internet right now. And you will see it posted as evidence that the story of Jesus was stolen from a pagan myth. The writing you see here says Orpheus Bacchus, which is another name for Dionysus. Okay? And it's been claimed this is Dionysus crucified. Freke and Gandy use this on the cover of their books, so they must think this is pretty important, right? Okay? What they don't tell you, but which is in one of the sources that they use, is that this item, this gem, is a modern forgery. And yet it's all over the place as proof that Christianity is stolen from pagan myths. It's like one of their leading arguments out there right now. One of their leading arguments in pictures.
And so that's false.
It's completely false. It's not even relevant. It was made in modern times, and this is what experts determined a long time ago.
And so they're placing this on the cover of the book. They're playing upon a gullible audience that is not trained historically. They're not trained religiously. And it sounds initially appealing, though. Go even further.
Okay.
Who are we've seen the Egyptian connection, Osiris, Horus. We've seen Mithra. We've seen Dionysus. Who else are they saying was virgin born, 12 apostles? Didn't they also mention a star heralds the birth, 3 wise men appear, dying and resurrecting gods? In your book, Shattering the Christ Myth, you dismantle all of this and demonstrate that that's not true of any of these.
I tried to make my list complete. I tried to dig out anyone they were making any sort of claim about. Now, there's some major names that are regularly appealed to. Mithra is probably the top name. Osiris is probably second. Some of the other names that follow, Dionysus, Attis is one of the gods that one of the figures that they appeal to. Horus, the other Egyptian deity, is in there. And then there's a bunch of minor figures. I call them the minor leaguers of the pagan copycat field. And there's some people, like a guy named Bedru, B-E-D-D-R-U, who's supposed to be some savior figure from Japan. I looked him up. He doesn't even exist. One of them tried to say, well, actually, that's a different spelling of Buddha, but it's clear that they recognize Buddha in other forms in the source that they got this from. So obviously this Bedru of Japan figure was completely made up out of this guy's head. Buddha, Krishna, some of the Eastern deities out there. A fellow named Zalmoxis is one of the more obscure ones they'll use. A fellow named Dazbog, who's more like a Slavic Russian kind of figure. They'll even appeal to some of the Norse gods, like Odin.
Quetzalcoatl?
Yes, they'll even go that far. Over here in the New World, okay? Christians came over and stole from that too.
Now, this stuff would be so marginalized by professional scholars.
Absolutely.
This should be dismissed for the curiosity that it is. But in our contemporary information age, this just keeps being recycled and recycled and recycled. That must be maddening to you.
Well, maddening, not to me. It's kind of fun, like I say, but I can see where it would be maddening, and it's ridiculous, though. And when it comes to something, let's say like Mithra, a gentleman like David Ulansey, one of the world's leading experts on Mithraism, he's not going to have time to look at stuff like this. He's not going to be interested in it. Most of the scholars aren't going to take the time to look at this, although some are starting to look at it now because they're starting to realize the need to. People like Ben Witherington are starting to talk about it on their blogs. They're starting to reflect the fact that more and more people are hearing about this and asking questions about it.
Now, you're president of Tecton Apologetics. You deal with these issues all the time. Give us the names of some of your other internet partners and sites that people can go to in order to find information about the Christ myth thesis.
Perhaps one of the leading ones right now, and one I link to quite a bit, is by a fellow named Glenn Miller with 2 N's, and it's called the Christian Think Tank. Now, Glenn does not do this full time. He is a businessman by trade, and he just posts articles occasionally these days, maybe like once every 2 or 3 months. Some people have compared him to an elephant, whereas they've compared me to a horse. Like, I run around real fast, and he just sort of plods along, knocking people over. His articles are like 50 pages long at the shortest sometimes, but he gets the job done. He does a lot of detailed research. He knows his business.
Give us some more.
His address is christian-thinktank.com.
Who else is working in this field?
Well, right now you just have some people blogging. You have people like Ben Witherington, scholar. He's got a blog, and you find it at benwitherington.blogspot.com. You'll find some of the other people getting into it very briefly, like N.T. Wright. You'll find people like Darrell Bach briefly mentioning it. And there's a new book out called Reinventing Jesus, a relatively new book by a trio of authors, Komaszewski, Sawyer, and Wallace. And they address this too. They address some of the pagan copycat theories in their book.
How do we get the truth down to the public square? It seems the media is able to just catapult these elephants, throw these false views out, and the common people receive it immediately. Does it take a long time for the truth to filter down to that popular level?
We have the same media advantages they do, and it's really just a matter of trying to get attention to what we're doing. Programs like this one, books like the ones I'm producing right now, we just need to keep doing that. We need to take advantage of the technology the same way these other people are. We don't want to be left behind. I'm not speaking in the dispensational sense, I'm speaking in the informational sense.
Young people are our future. Teenagers that they see Zeitgeist, they see the film The God Who Wasn't There, they see Religulous by Bill Maher. You've written a new book where you're putting the cookies on the bottom shelf where even the kids can get it. What's the name of that?
Blowing the Doors Off. Blowing the Doors Off.
And what is that book about
for
teenagers?
That has several issues in apologetics, Christ myth being one of them, but many, many others as well, distilled into very quick-to-read, simple chapters with references for further reading when you need more depth. And I want to mention in particular what you said about the youth being exposed to this. The apologist James White, his daughter Summer, is attending college, and she recently wrote a blog entry for James White's blog in which she pointed out that films like Zeitgeist are becoming more and more popular on the college campuses. And she issued a call to action, in many ways the same as I have. We need to do something about this now. The time to sit back and wait was past before. It's definitely well past now. If you just let it sit here, these kids are going to be convinced by it. Other people are going to be convinced by it. They're going to come home from college, and you're not going to know what happened to them.
Shattering the Christ Myth by James Patrick Holding, Tecton Apologetics, your web presence. Let's go a little bit deeper into the copycat thesis. So basically these people this is warmed over historical hash. They're quoting old sources that are outdated. They're not even accurate in their presentations. They're not credentialed scholars in the specific area, and yet they're being published. The information's present on the web.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Like this book, for example, it's published by it's a no-name press. Although I understand it is a subsidiary of a larger press. And according to one of my resource guidance people in England, which is where these guys are from, this is a secondary arm of a larger publisher. They put books like this that they would ordinarily be ashamed of under that secondary publishing arm. Okay. So,
publish or perish.
Yeah, publish or perish, exactly. And then another leading proponent of this idea publishes the book with a publisher that otherwise puts out books on Atlantis, time travel, UFOs, and things like that. I mean, obviously very credible.
As we close, give us a view of the literature. What are the names of some of the proponents of the Christ myth theory, so that we can sort of, when we're navigating around the World Wide Web, we know who they are?
You talk about the pagan copycat
Yes.
theory? Okay. The pagan copycat theory, Timothy Freak and Peter Gandhi are one of the leaders. Another leader is a woman named Akira S., although she now goes by Dorothy Murdoch. She's recently gone by that name instead. Those are the two main proponents out there publishing books. Otherwise, you'll find just mainly the older sources like Kersey Graves, I mentioned, like Gerald Massey. That's who it mainly comes from. So
we're looking at a bibliography of some of these self-published books. These are the titles that have come up. Or G.A. Wells, is he?
G.A. Wells is not pagan copycat. He is mainly into the idea of the silence thesis, although he, again, has abandoned that most recently. By 2003, he had abandoned the Christ myth. He did initially have the idea that some stories of Jesus were stolen from pagan myths, but he abandoned that in his later books.
One quick claim also, the types and shadows that Christians point to in the Old Testament. Isn't there an argument that Christianity was invented in terms of...
Yes, and we need to devote an entire show to
There's
that.
a program there. James Patrick Holding, our guest on the Veritas Forum. Tecton Apologetics, the book Shattering the Christ Myth. In a few more programs, we're going to be dealing with the Mormon Defenders. Your book on Mormonism, your book, The Impossible Faith. Tecton Apologetics is the place to go, because you're cutting edge, you're dealing with issues that are current. All the other apologetic literature is foundational. What you're doing is a capstone with regard to these current issues. And we have to stay current. We have to be anchored to the rock, but geared to the times. And our message stays the same, our methods change. One thing I appreciate about you is that you're engaging the culture, you're engaging the skeptics, you've got a whip, you're as sharp as a rapier. I mean, there's no way they're going to pin you against the wall, and you're open to debate these people. And you'll answer questions from our viewers, correct?
Yeah.
If they write you, email you?
They can email me. And if they want to come on the Theology Web forum as well, we have a community of people there.
Tell us again, how would they get to Theology Web to get to that format?
That'll be theologyweb.com, and I do have links to it on the front page of my site as well, and that's techtonics.org, tektonics.org. Remember to put in a .org, because if you put in .com, you'll get an engineering firm. And they ain't going to answer your questions.
And they don't know much about anything.
They ain't going to answer your questions.
You welcome people responding, contacting you at your email
I welcome all honest questions and inquiries. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again. James Patrick Holding, author of Shattering the Christ Myth, Tecton Apologetics. And please tune in on our next programs. We're going to do a number of other programs on the reliability of the New Testament documents and all of the other areas where we're in JP's area of expertise, historical apologetics. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.